is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.
Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. It's Mike Klimsing here without my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, but I am pleased to be joined by the head coach of the men's basketball team at Ohio University, Jeff Boals. Jeff, welcome to the Hoopheads pod.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Sorry we couldn't have your co-host, but we'll make do without him.
Yeah, we're going to try to make the best of it, and excited to have you on and talk some Ohio U basketball. Let's go back in time to when you were a kid. Tell us about your first experiences with the game of basketball when you were younger. How'd you get into the game?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of always played. Even when I was little, I remember my mom and dad put up like a plywood sheet and put like a little hoop, down in the basement, and Nerf basketball, and they put a hoop up in my driveway, which is all gravel driveway, and we lived up on a hill, so I spent a lot of time chasing the ball, down the hill, and probably the biggest memories I have is just really being like in the little bitty leagues and the high school kids at Sandy Valley, coaching teams on Saturday morning, night after games, and just kind of went up from there, played junior high school, and I played at a small school, Sandy Valley, and started on the JV team my freshman year, and a couple games in got bumped up to varsity. I was 6'2" at the time. And I remember playing Canton South, and they had these Minor brothers. I think it was Kurt and maybe Chris Minor. And they were like two huge, strong guys. And, I remember that was like my welcome to high school basketball moment. And, played 4 years, had some pretty good teams, won a couple of district championships, played in a couple of regionals. And, one in the Civic Center in Canton, one in the Field House in Canton. And, then ended up going to Ohio University. I tore my ACL for the first time in the state all-star game, North-South all-star game down in St. John Arena. And I was 17 years at the time, 17 years old, and thought my life was over. My recruiting was over, and, a lot of teams stopped recruiting me. And I ended up walking on to Ohio University in my first year. Didn't practice, didn't play, and, rehabbed the whole year. And then my redshirt freshman year, I played 39 minutes the whole year, not even equivalent to a whole game. And, going through that experience, I was like, this will never happen again. So really worked hard in between my redshirt freshman year and sophomore year, got stronger, tried to find my niche and my role on the team. In high school, I scored 32 points, 12 rebounds, but, college, you're playing against guys who are similar. When I played with some guys, Gary Trent, Gino Ford, Curtis Simmons, Chad Estes, a lot of really good players. And I kind of had to find my role, and, really found that role my sophomore, junior, senior year, and, had a great college experience.
How did you come to that realization as a player? Because I know that's difficult a lot of times for kids who transition from high school to college, and especially nowadays with the way the transfer portal is and kids coming in, and if things don't go exactly the way they want them to in that first year or two, then they end up leaving. And how did you go about just accepting kind of where you were, what you needed to do in order to be able to get out on the floor? Because I feel like my experience was pretty similar. I came in as a freshman. I played maybe a few more minutes than you did, but I didn't play a whole lot. And I figured out, look, this team doesn't need me to score. I got to play some defense if I want to get out on the floor. And so you just adjust. So what was your mentality like at that point?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at when we played, you worked harder, you bought your time, you kind of stayed the course. And if you look at now, I mean, it starts high school, right? Kids are jumping high schools, going to prep schools, AAU teams. They're playing on multiple AAU teams. And at the first sign of adversity, first sign of this is hard or not what I thought, it's leave. And, you like you said, you look at the transfer portal, and there's kids in there for a lot of different reasons, some of the right reasons, some of the wrong reasons. But, kind of for me, it's like, I didn't really play, and I wasn't very athletic. So I had to kind of change my game. I, had my torn ACL. So really just try to figure out how can I get on the floor. And it was more so, hey, you better start taking charges, be a great team defender, rebound the basketball, be vocal, dive on the floor for loose balls, that kind of role. And really, that's how I got minutes. We had guys who could shoot, guys who could score. I set screens. I guess when people start recognizing you as a great full court screen setter. I don't think it's a good thing, but that kind of became my niche. And, I accepted my role, and it was a big part of who we were and us winning. And I perfected the pass, though, to Gary Trent, over top of my guy, over top of his guy, to him, in between another guy, because there's always like 2 or 3 guys around him. And really, it was is throw the ball up to about 10.5 feet and let him go get it, and made me look good.
Hey, you got to know where your bread is buttered, right?
Yes.
And there's no question about that. Yeah, I think once you kind of accept and figure out where it is that you are, and you adopt the mentality of, hey, I just want to get on the floor. I just want to be able to play. And so many kids, I think, want to get that, want to be in that starring role. And as you said, it starts real early now. I mean, you go back to high school and AAU, like you mentioned, and kids are they're always thinking that the grass is greener at the next place, instead of kind of digging in and really seeing what they can do. What do you remember about playing for Coach Hunter during that time? What do you remember about him? What did you learn from him that maybe retrospectively impacted you when you went into coaching?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things. He was a very successful Division III coach, and coached for a long time. Great mentor to me. Even when I left, I would call him for big decisions. Getting married, buying a car, house, taking jobs, certain basketball questions, and I really didn't. I didn't know I wanted to coach. I didn't want to coach. Like, I wanted to be a physical therapist. I was a biology major. I was taking cell chemistry, organic chemistry, neuroanatomy. And 20 games into my senior year, I tore my ACL for the 3rd time. And that's really kind of started my coaching career. I saw the game differently. I was, around the coaches a little bit more. And then at the end of the year, he lost an assistant coach and asked me if I'd be interested in coaching. And, when you're 22 years old, you have no idea what you want to do in life. I'm like, sure.
Why not? Yep.
Yeah. So I started my master's degree in sport physiology and adult fitness. At that time, I was the restricted earnings coach, making $6,000 a year, and really enjoyed being around the game. And you probably remember when you play, leaving the game is tough because you miss the locker room, you miss the competition, and you've been doing it for so long. And coaching, you're able to kind of fulfill that, competition piece and being around young people, and the longer you coach, the more you realize why you coach, why you're there, what your why is, the impact you can have on young men, from a basketball standpoint, from a life standpoint. And I always told people, my biggest regret on taking the Ohio University job was that Coach Hunter wasn't there to see it. He passed away a couple years ago, and I would not be here without him today.
When you get that job initially, what was something that surprised you about coaching that maybe from a playing perspective you didn't realize coaches spent so much time doing one thing or another, or what, just becoming a part of the staff, that, especially at a school where you played, I'm sure there was some things kind of behind the scenes that you weren't aware of what was happening while you were playing. So do you remember anything about that particular aspect of getting into coaching?
Yeah, I mean, every situation is different. Like, as a player, right, you go to class, you go to weights, you go to practice, you have your social life, and really you're worried about what time you're going to eat your next meal, get your shots up. As an assistant coach, and the times have changed. The kids have changed. The recruiting's changed. Social media has been a complete change, good and bad, for the sport and for recruiting. As an assistant coach, you worry more about maybe a group of guys that you're in charge of, guys who you recruited, academics, recruiting, individual workout stuff, scouting. And, as a head coach, you just oversee everything. Everything's different. And, I'll go way back. My first real job after Ohio University, I was the only full-time assistant at Division II school, University of Charleston. And I did everything. I did every scout. I did all the recruiting. I swept the floor, cranked the baskets. I was in charge of the laundry room. I did the laundry. I drove the vans. I was the compliance director for 14 sports. So I did this for 3 years. And it was a great lesson for me because I really had to, manage a lot of different things. I was in charge of a lot of different things. I got my hands into different areas that helped me down the road. When I got my job at Marshall and Robert Morris and Akron, Ohio State. And so I think, when you go along the way, my first few years, I was always chasing bigger, more money. And maybe about after 4 or 5 years, I realized, you had to be present, right? You got to be 2 feet where you're at and not look forward. And really everything you do is to help the head coach and the university be successful. And no job is a menial job. And I think me being who I was at University of Charleston has helped me appreciate managers, GAs, support staff, video people, the bus driver, everything that they do to help our program win. And, I was the biggest compliment I ever heard from about Thad Matta, who I worked for 7 years. He was the same guy as the head coach 13 years at Ohio State University that he was as a GA, back at Indiana State. And, you see a lot of people who have big egos and, the higher they get, the more money they make, they kind of forget where they came from and what their roots were. And I think part of the way I grew up and, living in Magnolia, Ohio, there's some small town moral Midwest values will never go away.
How does that manifest itself in what you do day to day as a head coach in terms of your interactions? What does that look like? How do you make sure that your assistants, the janitor, the GA, the secretaries, how do you make sure that all those people know and understand how much you value them?
I think you make time for them. You know their name. You have meaningful conversations with them, not just a hi or a bye. Ask them how they're doing and really listen, and give a T-shirt out. That goes a long way, just from an appreciation standpoint. And I think everybody's got a role, right? Everyone's got a job to do. And as the head coach, you're the executive, CEO, oversee everything. You're a communicator. You're a coach, you're X and O's. And so I think being a head coach, you have to really get the pulse and the temperature of people. And I've been a head coach 5 years now. My first year as a head coach, it was like completely different. I was calling Coach Matta like every week. And I'll never forget my first time out in a game. I call timeout, and I'm like, timeout, like 30. And I'm like, all right, here we go. And before I even said a word, the first buzzer sounded. I'm like, hold on, man.
What happened?
Yeah, what happened to the time? And you just those situations that you aren't prepared for, and I think just having a mentor like him has been huge for me. Being able to bounce ideas off of, talk to, and because he's been through the same thing when he started coaching. But the other thing I didn't do a very good job of, I didn't coach my coaches because I had a young staff. I had Gino Ford, was on my staff, who was great for me, but I had a couple young guys who that was their first assistant job. And after that year, I realized I spent so much time coaching my players that I wasn't coaching my staff on how to be better assistants and just kind of let them learn the ropes and help them move up. So I kind of got to that as well.
All right, let's go backwards. What did you learn as an assistant from the guys that you were under? Give me maybe 1 or 2 specific things from a specific coach that you learned from them about what it took to be a head coach. And then we can spin it forward to what do you try to do to develop your coaching staff now as you come to the realization that that's an important piece of what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate. I've worked for a lot of great head coaches. Obviously Larry Hunter was the first head coach I worked for. And, the thing I got from him was just compete. He must have said compete 1,000 times a day. And, to this day, our practices and everything we do is driven by competition. Then I worked for Jason G., who was assistant coach on staff when I played at OU. He was the head coach at University of Charleston. And, really, it was a Division II school, but we wore shirt and tie every day, just how to be professional. And I think just a work ethic and managing time, because like I said, I did everything. And then I got to Marshall University and worked for Greg White. And he was an unbelievable marketing person, just appearance, like how you dressed, how you treated people, networking, building relationships. And then I went to Mark Schmidt, and I worked for him for 2 years at Robert Morris. He's at St. Bonaventure now, and his work ethic was unbelievable. Really just appreciating the small things, really appreciating winning. Because at that point it was hard to win, so he wanted to celebrate every win. And then I go to Keith Dambrot at Akron for 3 years, and he was great with constantly communicating with the players, really having a pulse on what was going on with them in their lives, girlfriends, school, problems, issues, academics. And it was really like, hey, we got to have a touch every day, whether it's a text message, a call, in person. And then from Thad, I worked for Thad for 7 years, and really the communication. He was an unbelievable communicator and really a great motivator. He figured out how to push every button to every individual, which, when you're dealing with 13 different kids, you have to find different ways to motivate them. So I've taken a little bit of, something from everyone. And, really when you become a head coach, everyone's like, hey, you got to be yourself, but you're going to draw on experiences that you enjoyed, what you thought was positive from everyone you work with and will work for.
So now as a head coach, what are some things that you try to pass along to your assistants? And again, everybody's in a different position. Some assistants are young and kind of starting out in their career. Others have been career assistants. Some guys have designs on eventually being able to be a head coach themselves. Some are content and happy and want to continue to be an assistant coach wherever they are. So how do you just navigate what you're doing with your assistants in terms of helping them to develop individually in their career, but also obviously helping you and the OU program to get to where you guys want to go?
Yeah, I think it's important. You got to sit down and figure out what their goals are. We do that with every player on our team. And, I think as a leader, as a CEO, like my job is to kind of be a servant leader and help them out in their careers. And it's a fine line because, you look at all the great programs that Dukes and Gonzagas and, all these programs that are Michigan States and Ohio State, like continuity is probably one of the best things of staff, right? You don't have staff turnover. And when you have staff turnover, you got to kind of keep reteaching everything, right? Relearning everything. And it's almost like you're not progressing that way and doing other things. So, but, I want them to be successful. And, Thad really empowered us as assistant coaches, gave us a lot of responsibility, gave us a lot of coaching responsibility, recruiting responsibility. And I think, when you empower an assistant coach and give them responsibility, it's going to help them. And they're going to make mistakes like anybody. And then you got to correct them and help them and, teach them. And I think just really understand, like, hey, if you want to be a head coach, here's how you got to act. Here's how you got to think. Here's what this entails. And, a lot of times you'll tell them when you make decisions, think like a head coach would. And I'll never forget my first summer, on the road in July. Normally as an assistant coach, I'm calling the head coach, hey, man, this kid played well. This kid played well. Hey, call this kid, text this guy, call this coach. And I got my like 8, 9, 10 guys, right? Well, as a head coach, you got 3 assistants doing it. And after you're watching a full game or games all day long, you got all these assistants telling you what this guy did and text this guy. So your list becomes so long. And I remember calling Thad like, hey, man, I apologize. I was a horrible assistant coach. So, but, you live and learn, and it's a great profession. It's not so great business sometimes, but I love what I do, and I think that's a big part of it.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the transition from going from being an assistant coach. Your last assistant coaching job is at Ohio State with Thad Matta, obviously Big Ten, big time school. You then get an opportunity to go and be the head coach at Stony Brook. So you're stepping from an assistant coach to a head coaching position. Talk about the transition, both in terms of the level going from Division I to Division II, and then also the transition from assistant coach to head coach.
Yeah, I think, you always think you're ready, to be a head coach, but until you sit in that seat and go through those experiences, you're always learning. And, I always say it's better to learn from winning than learn from losing, right? You can still learn, either way.
Right.
But you got to take your lumps and go through experiences and deal with adversity. Like, you kind of shape who you are when you go through adversity. And, how you handle prosperity. And, I think as an assistant, sometimes it's easier, but as a head coach, like you're in charge. Like every decision you make affects winning, losing, everyday, things. And, I remember like when I went from Ohio State to Stony Brook, you go from completely different budgets, travel, facilities, you name it. But I think the one of the best things I can draw back on, like I was at University of Charleston Division II school in a gym of 1,000 people, and I drove the vans, cranked the baskets, swept the floor, did the laundry. So it wasn't a big adjustment for me, being at a low major level at Stony Brook, but I loved it. I mean, the onus was on you, and I think when you really look at the macro, the amount of decisions you make, on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, it's like sometimes you go home and, you ask your wife or your kids, what do you want to eat? And you'll be like, I don't care. I don't want to make a decision where we eat. But I think that's the cool thing about just being in charge of your own program, putting your own imprint on it, doing things the way you want to do it. And, for me, culture was big. It's an overused word, I think. But, we wanted high character guys, like guys who did the right thing on and off the court. We made some tough decisions when I got the job, getting rid of some kids, but they weren't as tough as you would think, knowing how we wanted to do things. And we actually did better and kind of overachieved because of that. And, year 2 at Stony Brook, we took a little bit of a dip because we got rid of some upperclassmen. We were young. And then year 3, when I was up there, I mean, we had 11 freshmen, sophomores, 1 junior, and we won 24 games. We beat South Carolina, Rhode Island, George Washington, Northern Iowa. And it was a positive culture. It was like, come to work every single day culture. And, our guys loved playing with each other and for each other. And we had guys who accepted their roles. And that's the biggest thing, right, as a head coach, is really being transparent with every individual, getting everyone on the same page, because that's probably the most difficult thing. When I was at Ohio State, the year we went to the Final Four in 2012, we got beat by, let's say, 20-some at Wisconsin. And when we came back, Coach Matta had a team meeting, was like, hey, look, like if I'm going to be the 8th person you guys listen to, it's not going to work. Like I can't be number 8. I know I'm not going to be 1 or 2, but I can't be 8. Because all these young people have so many people, I call them the externals, right? All these people around them. And like you alluded to before, when you come in, there's expectations individually, right? From peers. And when I come in and play a role and I go 32 points as a senior high school to 6 points a game to 5 points a game, everyone's like, hey, wait a minute.
Right. What's wrong with Jeff?
You go to the highest level, everybody thinks they're going to be in the NBA. So now it's like Mike's not throwing you the ball. Mike's he shouldn't be playing over top of you. You're better than Mike. He looks you off on the transition. So now you got all these negative thoughts in your head. And as a coach, you're trying to program everybody for one goal, being on the same page, playing together. And so managing all those egos and, externals and that's probably the biggest thing as a coach, is trying to get everyone on your team on the same page that's in your circle.
What does that look like day to day? So is that formal conversations? Is that informal conversations? How do you go about continuously getting your kids the message about, hey, here's what we're trying to achieve as a team, and here's what we need you to do in order to help us achieve that? How do you get that message across?
Yeah, it's got to start in the recruiting process, being transparent and really talking about how we do things, the way we do things. And that way, when they get there, it's not like, wait a minute, you told me I was going to be able to shoot 20 times, So it starts in the recruiting process, being transparent, truthful, and understanding who we have in our program and how we run things and how we've won. And then I think it's when they get there, sitting them down and building a relationship off the court, right? So then when tough times do come, it's easier to talk about things. Let them know your door's always open. You can talk about whatever, whenever. Sitting down with them, explaining their role and what I think their role should be for the team, hearing what they think their role should be. And sometimes it might come to a mutual decision, because your role this year isn't going to be the same next year. It's going to change with people coming in and out. And it's tough sometimes to accept that role because you feel as an individual, I can do more. I can do this. Well, that's great, but that's not what the team needs. And, it's a team game. If you want to be an individual, go play golf, go play tennis, whatever it may be. And so I think it's tough, but if you're transparent, if you have the expectations, and every now and then, kids are going to be frustrated, right, by their role. And sometimes you bring it up in front of the whole team. Sometimes you do it individually. Sometimes the assistants do it before it even gets to you. And I think when you have good kids, it's a lot easier to, be able to relay that message.
All right. So talking about that and bringing good kids into your program, let's talk a little bit about recruiting. How do you start out year to year? Where does your initial list of players come from that you're looking at? Where do you go? How do you put together that list with your staff of guys that you want to at least take a look at and consider bringing into the program?
I think a lot of times, your assistants do a great job of building relationships with a lot of AAU guys, high school guys. And I think it's important that the assistant knows what type of player the head coach wants, who he wants to coach. And, there's times as an assistant, you're like, man, this kid's really good. He's does this and this, but he might not be the best player for the head coach to coach. So now it's like, hey, you got to figure out who that might be. And, it's tough sometimes, but that's kind of the way things should be. And, you look at recruiting services a lot more for names than anything, not the evaluation, because those guys go out way more than coaches do, especially in the springtime when, coaches can't go out on the road recruiting. And, you really just got to do your job about building relationships around the kid, the high school coach, the AAU coach, the assistant coach, the workout guy, the aunt, the uncle, the mom, dad, brother, so whoever it may be, really. So when you're talking to those people, they're saying the same message to the kid, what you're saying. And, so you really try to get a list of kids and normally on an average year, you're going to bring in 2 or 3 kids, per year. Our first couple of years at Ohio, we brought in like 7 my first year, 6 my, second year. We're bringing in 3 this year, which is an exorbitant amount that you normally would. But we had attrition, guys leaving, guys we got rid of, the transfer portal. There's an average of 3 kids per team per year leaving.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, so everything's fluid, and you always got to, the team that you have start the year is going to be never the team you start the next year with. And so you got to constantly keep recruiting and building relationships and staying in touch with people.
How do you balance out your evaluation of a player between watching them with their high school team versus watching them with their AAU team in the spring or summer? How do you balance out what that evaluation looks like for a kid?
That's a great question, Mike. I laugh because when I was at Akron, we recruited kids, Shelvin Mack. And when you saw him play, like the only time you really see him play was at AAU. And he played with the D1 Greyhounds, OJ Mayo, Billy Walker. They were loaded, pros on the team. And on that team, Shelvin Mack was like catch, reverse, catch, drive, pass, shot. Good job. He was a distributor. And I remember, Coach Dambrot seeing him. He's like, he's a good player. But when you go see him at, in high school, he went to a small school in Kentucky. He's like, oh, wow, finish.
Yep.
He averaged like 27 points a game. So the evaluation, when you see him high school and AU, are completely different evaluations. And, he ended up going to Butler, had a great career there and, played in the NBA for a while. So I think it's important to see kids in different settings. You might see them in a showcase where it's like you bring in 60 kids and they just hoop, right? Well, that might not be a great setting for that kid. Jared Solinger would go to these, Nike camps and whatever, would never touch the ball unless he rebounded or got the ball and net take it out of bounds.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was pretty darn good. So I think it's important to see those kids in different settings and because they have different roles in their high school team and AAU teams.
Along that line, is it easier maybe to evaluate guards in an AAU/showcase setting because they're more likely to have the ball in their hands versus maybe a kid who's going to play more on the interior who, like Solinger, isn't going to get the ball as much? Maybe they're better off being evaluated as a high school player, or is it just player to player? It doesn't really translate necessarily.
No, I think it does. I mean, when you're a guard, you have the ball more in your hands, and even if it's one pass away, that guy's either going to pass or shoot it. And, that's why I think it's important to see big guys like that with their high school team, because normally they're probably the best player, have plays ran for them. There was a kid we recruited at Stony Brook who played with Team Takeover, and Team Takeover was always loaded, and he just played a role. And, I talked to his parents. I'm like, he doesn't look to shoot ever. I said, well, put him on a different team where he has to score, right? So they put him on this Team Takeover Orange team. Now he's the guy, and he played confident and free and loose, and it was just a completely different player. But a lot of times it goes back to, bigger's not always better, right? And grass isn't always greener. It's greener where you water it, and it's what you make the most of when you're where you're at.
Yeah, I think when you can when you can get to so much of it is the right fit for both a player and then you as a staff, bringing in people that fit your profile. So if you had to describe the profile of the type of player that you're looking for, and obviously forget about the basketball skill, there's clearly a level of skill that they need to have in order to be able to play at your level. But when you think about the type of player that you and your staff want to coach, what does that player look like?
Yeah, so 3 things we always look for: high character, guys on and off the court that are going to do the right thing. Guys who love the game of basketball. Like, I want guys whose ambition is to be a pro. And, why do I want that? I know they're going to be in the gym, extra. I know they're going to watch tape. I know they're going to take care of their bodies, getting treatment, going to sleep. We want you guys serious about their degree, and then we talk about, non-negotiables. Going to class is non-negotiable. And, we want guys who want to get their degree and go to class, because, I call guys, I don't want to coach wheelbarrows, guys who you got to push all the time, because it's not going to work. Like, if I have to constantly tell you to go to class and constantly tell you to get in the gym and shoot extra, like, it's not worth, what we're doing, how we're doing it, to me, making you do something you really don't want to do. So that's who we kind of look for. And I think it goes back to recruiting, the expectation, right? When you come in here, here's what's expected of you. It's expected to go to class. It's non-negotiable. It's expected for you to, do extra. And, it's fine if some guys don't want to play pro. Like, I know everyone's dream isn't to play pro, but, they still have to have that work ethic, be a great teammate. They can't be like an energy vampire where if they're not playing, they're just sucking the life out of a practice and locker room. But, the kids are human, and, the tough thing is when you come in is with the first time you really face adversity, right? How are you going to respond? And we use an equation that guy, Tim Kite, who I don't know if you heard of Tim.
Yeah. Yep. E+R=O.
Yeah. So we use that all the time. And I really think that's what helped us get it through our, 21-day pause, canceled last 2 games of regular season. So we always talk about the response. What's your response going to be? And I think when you really make guys think, and when they hit adversity, that's when they need you the most, right? They need you when you're a freshman coming in and you have the ups and downs and you're not playing and, you're tired and you hit that wall. That's when they need you. And that's where you have to help them through it. At the time, they don't understand it. They don't realize it. But afterwards, they understand, the discipline, the commitment that you need to be successful at this level.
When you start thinking about looking for those kinds of kids that have those characteristics, and you mentioned earlier how you're not just recruiting the kid, but you're also recruiting this sort of external circle of people that are around them, that come with them, that become part of your program, whether that's mom, dad, high school coach, AAU coach, trainer, friend, aunt, uncle. So how do you, in the recruiting process, how much time do you spend having conversations and evaluating those external people that are around them in order to make sure that you're bringing in not only the right player, but also making sure you're not bringing in something that you don't want from that external circle?
Yeah, I think, it all starts with transparency, like letting the expectation know of, hey, here's what we expect, here's who we want. And, at the end of the day, really most parents, they want you to hold their kid accountable. They want you to discipline their kid when they need discipline. They want you to hug their kid when they need a hug. And most importantly, they want you to prepare them for the real world. And, think about all the experiences you had, playing basketball, the parallel relationship to the business world, and, time work, discipline, time management, teamwork, handling adversity, handling prosperity, all those basketball athletic, like, that's life lessons, and you're going through them. And, I think, when you talk to a kid, you're always saying, hey, who's going to help you make your decision? And when they start saying like 15 people, you're like, time out, right? You have to have a circle, right? A small circle. And it's like preferably make that circle a dot. Who are the people close to you that care about you and your well-being and your future for you to be successful, right? Mom, dad, grandma, might be a coach, but those people are the people that will never lie to you, right? Those people are the people who want you to be successful, right? And it's like you might go through a deal. Mom and dad aren't getting up at 6 a.m. to lift weights, right? They're not going to 8 o'clock class. You're the one doing it. So it's going to be your decision. But, mom, dad, grandma, whoever the circle is, they've been through life. They've been through experiences. They've seen people, dealt with people. So a lot of times they know what's best for the kid. So they'll give their opinion, and hopefully they make the right one.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, I think the right fit is really end up being the key for both the kid and their family, and then obviously for you guys as a program. Let's dive into some basketball stuff. Tell me a little bit about how you go about during your season. You could pick maybe a point in the season. Let's say, let's call it preseason, where you're putting together a practice plan. What does your practice plan process look like for putting together a daily practice? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the most time-consuming thing as a head coach, right? Trying to figure out what to do, how long to do it, how hard to do it, what you want to get accomplished that day. And, you got to have the pulse of everything, right? The season, how tired guys are, how long you want to go. Is it worth, going really long and not getting out of it what you want out of it? Or is it saying, hey, we're going to do these 3 things today? It could take an hour and 15 minutes. It could take 2 hours. It's going to be up to you guys. And I think the biggest thing is really getting you and your staff every single day to bring that energy, right? It's such a long year. Now it's year round, right? You're doing summer workouts, you're doing fall workouts, you're doing preseason workouts. It's such a long year. So you really have to, keep the energy level and the consistency. And one thing, with Thad that I really took was fresh minds and fresh legs. He kept on saying that. So we don't practice very long, even in the preseason. We might go 2.5 hours tops to start the year. When you're doing more teaching, the way they do summer workouts now, you can get all your defensive philosophy principles in. How to guard this screen, this screen, this screen. Maybe your flow offense, your 4-out, 1 in. Here are your rules to this. So when you start practicing, you've really already had the micro, piecing it together. It's not like when we played, man, like you had that build up to October 31st or October 15th and Midnight Madness was coming and everything was new and you're practicing 4 hours a day, trying to get everything in. It's completely different. So, that's probably one of the toughest things, just really trying to figure out what drills to do. We were talking about it, during the course of the year. We lost to Kent State by 10 at our place, and we got out rebounded by like 30. And, we had a quick turnaround. So as a coach, I'm like, okay, do we go out and just do rebounding drills and put the bubble up and risk hurting somebody, but to set the tone and make an example? Or we get this quick turnaround. Do we watch film? Do we chart every possibility to block out, every missed block out, every block out, how many rebounds you got, and show them, right, this has got to be our practice today because we play in 2 days. So I chose that way, right, to save their bodies. And, we got good kids and had some upper class kids, so it's a little easier, right? And they do it in the NBA all the time. They watch film and that's your practice, but there's got to be carryover. And since that game, we played them, we really charted it every single game, every single practice to make it an emphasis. And I think we won maybe 10 of our last 12 and started beating everybody. And that was a big emphasis for us.
Is that just a feel thing, Jeff, in terms of just knowing your team and your kids and kind of where you are in the rhythm of the season of whether or not we got to get out on the floor, or whether or not watching the tape is just enough?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a feel, having played, you kind of have an idea. And, a lot of times Thad used to always say, like, if you're tired as a coach, they're tired as a player. Right. And,
Yep.
Sometimes it might be just a simple, come in, stretch, shoot, walk through, you're out of there. And it might be a situation where you take 2 days off in a row, which, you never do and you don't feel good about as a coach. But those 2 days off go further than anything because it's a mental refresher. It's a physical refresher. And like I said before, it's such a long year that you need those breaks. And, the COVID pause, like as bad as it was, that might have helped us. It's like,
Hit the reset button, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel about, you think back to when the era when you and I played and what the summer was like for a player in our era versus what a summer is like for a player in today's era, and conversely also for a coach versus what it was like back then. And it just feels like to me that when you're going, pretty much 11 months out of the year, that it would be easy to get stale, both from a coaching standpoint and a playing standpoint of just being around each other that much, where there isn't that break to recharge and come back and be like, oh, I can't wait to get back in the gym with my team, with my teammates, with my coach. Just how do you approach that to make sure that your team doesn't get stale with the amount of time that you guys are putting in the gym year round?
Yeah. I mean, back when we played, it's like no cell phones. You left school and you did your own deal.
Yeah, I remember they handed me a 2-page dittoed workout. They're like, all right, here's your workout. We'll see you in August. Come back.
Yeah.
I hope you can make the 2-mile run when you come back. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's something to be said for that. Like, who really wants to be good? Like, who's going to work out
For
on
sure.
their own?
Yep, absolutely.
Now it's like you got summer school, you got access, you got trainers, you got, nutritionists, you got everything there for you. But at the same time, like you said, it's year round, man. It's a grind. It's a long year. And, we got done with our season and, all of our classes were virtual. I told our guys to go home for 2.5 weeks. Like, get out of here. Normally you get maybe a week off and start right back up. But some of our guys had not been home since June, July. And, I think mentally more than anything, it's kind of like, hey, refresh, reset, regroup. We worked out for 1 week, lifted for 2, and then, finals was here. And, summer 1, we got about 8 of our guys going to be home. And, we'll give them a weightlifting program and, figure out where they're going to be in a gym. But I've always thought, like, as an individual, right, your goal or your job is to get better, right? We'll help you, but your job individually is to get better. We're bringing in new recruits, right? And if they come in, respect this person and compete, try to elevate everybody, or you're going to get bypassed. And that's your job. That's your fault. You have the same opportunity as the next guy. How hard do you work, right? What do you do? And, but I think going back, it's such a long year where you really have to be smart about how much you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it.
What about during the season film work? How much film I know how much film you guys are watching a lot, but how much do you share with your players during the year? I know they have access. Obviously, they can watch as much as they want on their own, but how much are you guys sitting down with them, either individually, like maybe with their position coach, or with you guys collectively as a team? How much are you putting them film? Are you putting in front of them?
Yeah, I mean, it was completely different because of COVID. We went into a bigger room and did less. We very rarely ever watched a whole game. Back when I played, man, it was like death. You knew it was coming. You were watching the whole game, and
Absolutely.
you knew the point where you did something bad, where you're like,
yeah, and then having that thing skip like 3 minutes past, so you have to watch it like 7 times, and the coach couldn't get it to stop at the right point. Yeah.
But we do a lot of edits. We do a lot of individual stuff, with our guys individually. And then, when we do scouting reports, it's more all edits of, the opponent, offense, defense, personnel. And post game, the next day, to kind of wrap up, we'll do edits of good, negative, and positive. I'm not a believer in just showing all negative, negative, negative. I think you got to accentuate what you did well. And even if it's something, like, hey, look, we lost the game, and here's 4 defensive transition clips where you didn't run back, you didn't communicate, you didn't stop the ball, and we gave up 10 points out of those 4 possessions. Okay, look at these 4 possessions during the game where we did do it, right? Boom, you're talking point, you're building a wall, you're contesting shots. They scored 2, points. That's the difference right there. If we would have done this in these 3 possessions, it's a fine line of winning, losing. So I think it's like, show them what they did wrong, but also show them, hey, this is where you're doing it right. You've done it. Now you got to be consistent with it.
Yeah, that's so important. I just think back to, I don't remember that ever happening to me when I was a player on any level. It was almost always at that point. It was almost negative. Like, here, we got to get better at this. So I think coaches today, obviously there's been a shift sort of in just the way that coaches approach things, because kids have changed in that respect. I think in terms of the type of coaching that they respond best to. And obviously as coaches, we try to evolve and make sure that we're getting the most out of our athletes. And that's taken us to evolve and make it, just do things a little bit differently than maybe it would have been done back in the day when you and I played. You mentioned earlier that everything that you guys do on the practice floor and in games and in your program is based on being competitive. So if I'm a high school coach, or I'm a coach starting out in my career, and I want to be able to develop a competitive practice environment, what are some things that you do to make sure that you're getting your kids to compete day in and day out?
I think, some of the best ones I've ever been around, if you do a drill just to do a drill, they're kind of like, why are we doing this? Right. But if you put a point system on it, and you say somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, the loser's going to run, or a loser has a punishment, they're like, okay, game on, let's go. Could be the same drill. But now if you put, +2 for an offensive rebound, +1 for a defensive rebound, +5 for taking a charge, +1 for diving on the floor for loose ball, first 1 to 10 wins. Right now it's like you have a purpose for the drill. It's competing. And we'll do 1 possession games. First one to score wins, best of 7 series. It might be best of 3 series, jump ball, first to 5, just to compete in everything you do. And I think, when you get that competitive drive and understand that every possession matters, because, you look at how many games, my first year coaching, we had so many close games, 1 possession games. And after like the 4th or 5th one, I went back and started looking at everything differently, watching the last 5 minutes of every game, coming up with like 2 out of bounds plays, 2 side out of bounds plays, 2 set plays, that if we don't have any timeouts, this is what we're running. And, I wasn't prepared for that, going in to be a head coach. But I think the more competition, the better. I think it's going to elevate your program, elevate individually, and you're going to really stress the importance of every possession matters. Winning, losing is a fine line.
What's your system for charting, recording, keeping track of that during practice? How do you keep track of that? And do the players, is it cumulative where the players know, like, hey, I won 6 drills today, or I was on the winning team 4 times? Just how do you organize that piece of it?
Yeah. So a lot of times, our managers will chart who wins and loses, like summer pickup. And we chart all that. And it's amazing when you look at, end of summer, certain guys win, certain guys lose. And, throughout the course, we try to change up the teams in practice in the preseason, before we kind of get a set rotation and want to get into our, consistent area. We have a gold standard. We call it the Bobcat standard, where we chart every shot, assist, steal, turnover, charge taken, and it's really a point system. And we add it up every single day, and there's a Bobcat standard winner every day. We keep it cumulative for the year and for the week, and it's amazing, how it kind of plays itself out. When you're looking at it, and, when you post it and the kids they see it, and they see they have turnovers, and the turnovers -2, like, they're going to be more aware of it, right? If they see, I got 3 offensive rebounds in a week, offensive rebounds are worth plus 1.5, now they're more aware of it, and they want to do it more. And, they're number 7, and, man, I want to get up to number 5. So that's another competition piece where we just, chart every stat, every 5v5 live drill.
Is that mostly the managers that are doing that, assistant coaches? Who's keeping track of that day to day?
Yeah, so really we do it after practice, watch the film and do
Okay.
it, and just kind of keep a running effort, and then we post it, and we'll either screenshot it, capture it, send it to the team via text, so they can see, daily what it looks like.
How long does it take you to go through, let's say you have an hour and a half practice, how long does it take you to go through the tape of that hour and a half practice?
Yeah, I think depends on what, as a coach you want to look at. I mean, sometimes early you're going to watch everything, but when you get into it, you're going to fast forward through the passing stuff, the fundamental stuff, and the shooting stuff, and really get to the 5v5, 4v4, the 3v3, all the breakdown stuff, and really seeing what you need to continue to work on, what we're doing well, what we need to fine tune, so it just kind of varies throughout the year.
What would you say is the biggest thing that you've changed about your belief about practice since you first got into coaching?
Yeah, probably positivity piece. I mean, I remember like Coach Matta, man, like he's just like Yoda, just a Jedi mind tricks. And there'd be days in assistant where we huddle up afterwards, and he'd be like, "Hey, we started off slow, and picked it up and really finished, strong. That's the effort." And as an assistant, you're thinking like, that was the worst practice we've ever had. But like mentally, right, the positivity, getting your guys to think they're doing well and believing. So I think just the positivity, really building confidence and belief in your guys. Like you said, it's a different kid. And social media's changed everything, the likes and the direct messages and the follows, and there's a lot of sensitive people out there, and some people are blunt to the point, hit them between the eyes, but I think you really have to know the individual to be able to get through to them. And I mean, when I played, I mean, Coach Hunter would rip me, he would yell at me, and I would get fired up, right? I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna show you, right? I'm gonna play harder. Some guys, you yell at them, they go into a shell.
Yep.
It's the complete opposite what you need them to do. You call somebody out in front of the team, it's not the way to do it, right? You walk up to that individual and be like, "Hey, Mike, come on, man. You're not playing hard enough. You're dogging it. You're hurting us. I got you, coach." Like, so you got to figure out how to talk and communicate to everybody. And I think that's kind of what leadership is. Even a captain, right? You got to figure out how you can talk to your, center and your power forward and whatever to get through to them.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. How do you handle social media? What do you do? How do you talk to the kids about what they should be, shouldn't be doing, looking at? And I know, I'm sure that, kid has a good game and gets lots of positive messages. Kids has a bad game, and all of a sudden that negativity is coming. That's something that I think back to when I played, and I can't even imagine what that would have been like to have to deal with those kinds of incoming messages coming to you. So how do you help your kids to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's a social media driven world right now with these kids, and there's so many distractions, right? There's like TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and Twitter and this, and it's like there's a lot of good stuff, but there's a lot of bad stuff. And then these kids are human, right? If they have a really good game, oh man, you're awesome, you're great, we love you, whatever. You have a bad game, you suck, go kill yourself, you don't deserve a scholarship, you need to transfer. And I don't care who you are, right? These kids search their names on Twitter, and like that sticks in your head no matter what. And like Aaron Kraft, like the kid had no social media. He just thought it was worthless, took too much of his time, didn't want the distraction. Like, and that dude played with a clear mind, and I think trying to separate those, right? What you post, what you retweet, and you want your guys to have a platform. You want them to have a voice, especially now with what's going on, the social injustice. Like, you want them to express themselves.
For sure.
But you have to educate and teach like everything else. Like, sometimes if you post a picture, or you're in someone else's video, you're at a party, and someone passes you a beer, and you take it and go to pass it to someone else, and you take a picture.
Yep.
Out there.
For
So
sure.
perception's reality sometimes. So you really just got to educate, teach, talk, try to use different experiences from other people, doing negative things. How can it impact you positively? How can it impact you negatively? And I think now that you have this name, image, and likeness coming up, like, it's going to magnify social media even more, right? The digital social platforms. And we as coaches have to help build these brands. But understanding, if you post something, you had a picture of a gun and you're doing whatever, like, that could affect your, earning capacity.
For sure. Yeah. Long term, not just short term, but long term.
So there's a lot that goes into it.
All right. Let's shift from that more of a negative story. Let's shift to a very positive story that you've been able to be a part of with Jason Preston's story. Can you just kind of give us the thumbnail sketch of what just a special kid and his circumstances, and just share with maybe audience members who maybe don't know the story at all, or people who do know it, just kind of shed some light on what has been unique about the experience of coaching him.
Yeah. So Jason Preston, just a phenomenal person, great basketball player, great teammate, very good student. He's 15 hours from graduating. He's been in school 3 years. But 5 years ago, he was 6 feet tall, 140 pounds. Lost his mom 6 years ago. No dad around. And, he started living with his mom's best friend's son, who was like 27 years old, in an apartment. His aunt became his legal guardian. Aunt and uncle live in Jamaica. And, he scored 52 points his whole senior year in high school. Didn't even start a game. And at the end of the year, he decided to go to Central Florida as a student. So he enrolled in summer classes, took some classes from Central Florida. And then 4 of his buddies were playing in an unsigned senior tournament, AAU tournament in Orlando in July. So they said, hey, we need a 5th. You want to play? And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll play. So he goes and plays in this tournament. And prep school coach comes up to him and says, hey, where are you going to school next year? He says, Central Florida. And then he's like, to play? He's like, no, I'm just going to school. He's like, man, you need to, go to prep school. You got a chance to be a Division I player. So the kid was really excited about that and decided to go to the Believe Prep Academy in Tennessee. And there's 4 different teams. There's an A, B, C, D team. And he was on the B team, played well. They bumped him up to the A team, which is the best team, and didn't play a whole lot. So he wanted to go back down to the C team with his buddies. So he goes to the C team. It was like a rec league. And he averaged like a triple-double, and he made his own Twitter, his highlight tape, put it on Twitter. And Longwood University and Ohio University called about him and offered him scholarship. So he visited both and ended up going to Ohio University. And when he got to OU, he was like 6'3", maybe 160 pounds. And played his freshman year, averaged 5 points a game. And then I got the job. He grew, another half inch to an inch, gained 20 pounds that summer, lifting and eating. And, had a phenomenal sophomore year. Really, really good junior year this year. He declared for the NBA draft. He's going to test the waters. And he deserves in everything that he has coming his way. His life is a movie. What he's been through, the adversity he's been through to where he is today.
What are you guys hearing about where he stands with the draft at this point? Are you hearing anything?
Yeah, I think, right now, he's probably a 2nd-round pick. And the draft combine's coming up the the late part of June. So he'll have a chance to kind of impress people and let them see him, who he is. And, I think, if he doesn't like what he hears, he'll come back. If he thinks he can do it, he'll leave. And there will be nobody rooting harder for him than me.
Absolutely. All right. We are coming up on an hour, Jeff. I want to ask you one final 2-part question. And the first part of it is, when you look ahead in the next, let's say, year or two, what's the biggest challenge that you see on the horizon? You can take that whatever direction you want. And then number two, what's the biggest joy that you get every morning when you get to get out of bed and come into your office and be the head coach at Ohio University? What's your biggest joy from that?
I think the first one, I think about, when you said that was just, kind of repeating, right? Doing what we did this year. And it's hard. And you never want to use the rally cry of repeating. It's more about the process of getting there, right? What you do on a daily basis. And every year is different. Every team's different. When you win the following year, you're more marked. You're the huntee, not the hunter. Do fans back in the stands make a difference? Where people are trying to impress everybody. So I think just the process of getting back to where we were, I think about, I think it's gonna be the biggest challenge, for us. When I get up every day, I'm dreaming of really how can I improve our program, right, on a daily basis. And we have a simple goal for our team to get better as a team every day and to get closer as a team every day. And, it goes back to everything we talked about. How do you not, create a stale environment? How do you keep the energy? How do you challenge your guys? What decisions do you make, from a food standpoint, from a workout standpoint, nutrition standpoint, recovery standpoint? How do we get better? And I think, when you're the head coach and you oversee everything, you're really constantly, your mind's always thinking of different ideas, how to improve your program. My wife always tells me I'm one of few people in the world that love what I do. And to do it at my alma mater, is even more special. And, the fact that we won a championship this year, to have our guys, be able to experience what I was able to experience as a player, just an awesome feeling.
Absolutely. All right. Before we get out, Jeff, I want to give you a chance to share how people can connect with you, whether you want to share social media, OU website, whatever it is, the best way for people to reach out to you after they listen, if they want to just have a conversation or hit you up, find out more about your program, and then I'll jump back in and wrap things up.
Yeah. So ironically, when I was at Akron, Dan Tudor said, "Hey coaches, the next big thing is Twitter. You need to sign up for it." And I'm thinking, like, who's going to read 140 characters? I couldn't comprehend what, how, why. So I did it, and it was like at Jeff Boals, JEFFBOALS. And I've come to find out there's a lot of Jeff Boalses in the country, but that's my Twitter name, my Instagram name. And, I feel like I'm on there often and try to engage, with people doing that. And, so that's how they can get a hold of me.
Fantastic. Jeff, cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your schedule to jump on with us and share with our audience. And to everyone out there, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.
The Hoop Heads Podcast is brought to you by Head Start Basketball.